Number 01. When Xianxia's junior sister became a widow, the first thing he did was break off our engagement. He said, "Ruoxue has a proud and aloof temperament. She can't bear others' gossip and remarks. For now, I'll call off our marriage, and you'll bear the criticism in her stead. In 5 years, when her period of mourning ends, I'll propose marriage to you again. By then, the rumors will dissipate on their own, and it will have no impact on you." I nodded in agreement. Showing no trace of unhappiness, yet, I married someone else in the 2nd year after he left. 5 years later, when I heard Xianxia's name again, I was taking a man to a tailor's shop to have new clothes made. Daddy is a tattletale, a meanie. It was obviously a man's clothes that got broken. So mommy is making new ones for a man. Why does daddy get new clothes too? The 3-year-old little one, with 2 ball-shaped buns tied with beautiful red ribbons, shook her head as she spoke. Making the ribbons flutter along, I found it amusing and reached out to pinch her puffed-up little cheek. This morning, Shenju had somehow found the clothes a man had hidden. They were newly made just last month, but there was a big hole in them. He had gleefully reported a man to me while she was having breakfast, making her cry bitterly. In the end, I had to promise to take her to make another new outfit to calm the father and daughter down. Unexpectedly, Shenju had taken the opportunity to ask me to make him a new set too. "My dear wife, won't you pity your husband? Husband also wants to wear new clothes." Just thinking about Shenju's coquettish look as he leaned on me and clung to my arm made me want to laugh. A man, however, clenched her chubby little fists and said fiercely, "A man will choose the ugliest clothes for daddy, to punish him for speaking ill of a man." With that, she waddled away on her short legs to choose fabric like a little adult. I shook my head with a smile and turned back to tell the shopkeeper the clothing sizes. I had only said half of them when I heard a cold woman's voice behind me. "That's wrong." Number 02. My voice faltered. I slowly turned around and saw Xianxia standing side by side with Jiang Ruoxue at the door of the tailor's shop. The latter was affectionately holding his arm. The light and shadow fell on their backs, perfectly embodying the saying, "A talented man and a beautiful woman, a match made in heaven." "Jiniang, Xianxia hadn't expected to meet me here." A flash of joy crossed his face. He pushed Jiang Ruoxue's hand off his arm and strode toward me. "Jiniang, it really is you." His face lit up with joy, and his eyes sparkled with anticipation as he looked at me. "What are you doing here?" Seeing him suddenly after 5 years, I was also a little surprised. "I'm here to have clothes made." Upon hearing this, Xianxia glanced at the fabric in my arms, and a look of deep guilt and distress suddenly appeared on his face. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but hesitated. I ignored his inexplicable emotions and turned to Jiang Ruoxue, who had been standing at the door with a cold expression. "What did you say was wrong just now?" After all these years, time had left no traces on her. She was still wearing a white dress, embroidered with large patches of crabapple flowers on the hem and waist. She still carried that air of superiority, as if untouched by the mundane world. Jiang Ruoxue's expression was indifferent. Her cold gaze swept across my face, and a hint of sarcasm curled at the corner of her lips. "The size of the clothes is wrong." Her tone was cold and accusatory. "Ningchen's chest circumference is 3 kai and 1 kun, not 3 kai and 3 kun. How could you even forget that?" My hands holding the fabric stiffened. I subconsciously glanced at Xianxia, only to find his gaze fixed on the fabric in my arms. Indigo spiral-patterned satin, embroidered all over with large and small auspicious cloud patterns using fine silver thread. At first glance, it was clearly for a man. "Jiniang, I never thought you'd still be thinking of me after 5 years. Is this dress for me? It's so beautiful." His eyes reddened, and his voice trembled as he spoke. He even tried to reach out to grab me, but I dodged. So he had misunderstood. I wanted to explain, but Xianxia didn't give me the chance. "It's okay if the size is wrong. I like it anyway." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I wronged you 5 years ago, but now I'm back. Now I'm a bachelor of the Grand Secretariat, and the Emperor has even bestowed upon me a 5-courtyard mansion. I'll choose a date soon to come to your house to propose marriage." But, he paused, hesitatingly saying, "I plan to marry Ruoxue as my wife. You can only enter the mansion as a noble concubine." "A noble concubine?" Upon hearing this, the words I had been about to say got stuck in my throat. What did you say? I had never met such a shameless person in my life. But Xianxia thought I was dissatisfied with the status of noble concubine. He looked at me with a troubled expression and explained, I have no other choice. Ruoxue has a cold and proud temperament. She can never be a concubine and be laughed at. I laughed angrily. So it's okay for me. Seeing that I was truly angry, Xianxia panicked. I'm doing this for your own good. He pursed his lips and said, you were born into a humble family. In the future, when interacting with those officials' wives, you'll probably be ridiculed. Ruoxue is different. She's the daughter of the former Grand Tutor, knowledgeable, reasonable, dignified, and a model of a noble lady. He glanced at me cautiously and added, don't worry, Ruoxue has a cold temperament and disdains to fight for power. Although you'll be a noble concubine, you'll still be in charge of all the affairs in the mansion. There's not much difference. Seeing him talking more and more absurdly, I quickly interrupted, no need. You don't have to marry me. This dress belongs to someone else. It's not for you. I had thought that after saying this, Xianxia would be more or less surprised. Unexpectedly, after a moment of stunned silence, he gave me a meaningful look. Just as I was confused, Jiang Ruoxue let out a soft sneer. Her mocking gaze wandered over me, then drifted lightly to Xianxia. What did I tell you before? Women from such small families are best at scheming and trickery. Now she's playing hard to get and putting on airs, isn't she? Playing hard to get, putting on airs. A nameless anger surged in my chest. Xianxia also glared at me reproachfully. Jiniang, don't make up such lies out of pettiness. Marrying Ruoxue is just an expedient measure to give her a place to settle in the capital. It has nothing to do with romantic feelings. Don't overthink it. Besides, he paused, then continued to persuade me earnestly. Being my noble concubine isn't necessarily a grievance for you. His unspoken words were that with my background, being able to marry a top scholar who now held a third-rank official position was already a high marriage. I shouldn't be greedy, so I should be grateful to him. Kowtow 3 times and prostrate 9 times. I completely turned cold. Can't you understand what I'm saying? I won't marry you, whether as a wife or a concubine. After speaking, I looked up at Xianxia. We were once engaged. But you took the initiative to break off the engagement 5 years ago. Now please don't say such misleading things again. What's more, I'm already married and have a husband. Upon hearing these words, Xianxia suddenly looked up. What did you say? He had such a stubborn look that he wouldn't let it go until I answered. I had to repeat it word by word. I've already married someone else, and we have a 3-year-old child. Seeing how certain I looked, Xianxia's expression gradually turned solemn, his eyes darkening. His gaze on me seemed to pierce through me. His eyes turned scarlet as he stared at me intensely, and the hostility around him was barely contained. After a long while, he took a deep breath. Impossible. You can't have married someone else. I twitched the corner of my mouth. Why is it impossible? When I reached marriageable age, of course I would get married. But you can't, I laughed. Women in Dayuan all marry at 18 or 19. Why can't I? Xianxia gritted his teeth, his voice tight. Didn't I tell you to wait for me for 5 years? Now I'm back to marry you. I retorted. Marry me as a concubine. As soon as the word concubine came out, Xianxia's face turned even uglier. He fell silent for a long time. Just as the atmosphere became more and more oppressive and I was about to turn around and leave, Jiang Ruoxue spoke up. Stop pretending. She glanced at me lightly, her gaze falling on what I was holding, her expression mocking. If you were really married, why would you deliberately come to the tailor's shop to make clothes today, knowing that Ningchen is returning to the capital? And you even chose Ningchen's favorite color and pattern. As she spoke, her face always carried that condescending and aggressive look, as if she had seen through everyone. Dare you say this dress isn't for Ningchen? I said, it's not. But Jiang Ruoxue refused to believe it. I know you're still angry about Ningchen breaking off the engagement 5 years ago and want to manipulate him through this. She sneered. I know exactly what's going on in the minds of you little women, but I advise you not to go too far. Playing such tricks repeatedly will only annoy people. After speaking, she turned to Xianxia. When we were in the northwest, You mentioned your former fiancé to me many times, praising her for being gentle and magnanimous, different from other women. Now it seems, she's no different. I told you she wouldn't be willing to be just a concubine after waiting all these years, but you didn't believe me." Xianxia, as if he had breathed a sigh of relief, let go of the gloomy and terrifying expression on his face and looked at me disapprovingly. "Jiniang, even if you're angry, you shouldn't say you're already married," he said. "I know you're still upset about me breaking off the engagement 5 years ago, but I explained it to you. At that time, Ruoxue had just become a widow, her situation was difficult, and she couldn't bear people's criticism. I had no choice but to break off the engagement. Don't be willful anymore." 5 years ago, the night before our scheduled engagement, that's exactly what Xianxia had said when he came to break off the marriage. Number 03. Xianxia and I had known each other since childhood. We could be called childhood sweethearts, innocent and close, but he was the heir to a marquisate, while I was only the daughter of a minor official in the Hanlin Academy, a position my father had begged and bribed countless connections to secure. If it weren't for the fact that my mother and the Marquis of Xie's wife were bosom friends who had betrothed us while still pregnant, Xianxia and I would have had no connection at all. Precisely because of this, I endured no shortage of exclusion and ridicule. Everyone said my mother was scheming, and that I would surely be trouble in the future. When I heard these words, I dared only cry under the covers for several nights in a row. When Xianxia found out, he grabbed a weapon and rushed to the mansions of the young masters and ladies who loved to gossip, causing a huge commotion. After that, no one dared to mention it again. At that time, the 16-year-old boy, full of youthful vigor, stood under a fiery red maple tree, holding my hand, and promised word by word, "You are my fiancé. I will not let anyone bully you." Who could have imagined that the same boy would personally come to break off our engagement the night before our betrothal? And the reason he gave was that I was of bad character and poor health. I had been overjoyed, waiting for him to arrive with betrothal gifts. But those 8 words hit me like a bucket of ice water poured over my head. I dug my nails into the palm of my hand, my voice trembling as if each word was soaked in blood. "Do you know what I will suffer from tomorrow onward because of this reason for breaking the engagement?" Xianxia nodded. "I know. But Ruoxue is my junior sister. I promised my master to protect her well. Now her husband has died a tragic death, and her husband's family abandons her. I cannot let her become a laughingstock in others' mouths." When Xianxia was 15, he became a disciple of Grand Tutor Jiang. Grand Tutor Jiang had a daughter named Jiang Ruoxue, a famous talented woman in the capital, untouched by the mundane world, cold and aloof. The only thing Grand Tutor Jiang couldn't let go of before his death was his daughter, and he specially instructed Xianxia to take good care of her. Xianxia agreed without hesitation. From then on, Jiang Ruoxue became a shadow I could never shake off. When we went out to play, Xianxia would take her along. At banquets, he always stayed by her side to protect her. Even for gifts, he would prepare 2 identical sets. I cried and made a fuss, but he would only say, "Ruoxue has no one but me now. I must be nicer to her." It wasn't until 6 years ago, when Jiang Ruoxue insisted on marrying someone in the northwest, that I finally breathed a sigh of relief, but unexpectedly. Only a year later, Jiang Ruoxue's husband died in an accident. As soon as the news reached the capital, Xianxia wanted to break off our engagement even though our betrothal banquet was the next day. I forced a bitter smile. "So you let me become the laughingstock instead," Xianxia hurried to explain. "This is only temporary. In 5 years, when Ruoxue's period of mourning ends, I will propose marriage to you again. By then, the rumors will dissipate on their own, and it will have no impact on you." He spoke eagerly, but each word was like a hooked knife, stabbing into my heart. At this point, I knew that no matter what I said, it would be useless. I had thought that after growing up together as childhood sweethearts, he would not humiliate me like this, even out of regard for our 16 years of friendship. But this sentence, like the last straw, crushed all hope in my heart. I wiped the tears from my face, let go of his sleeve, and my voice was so calm it felt strange even to myself. At that moment, I didn't cry or make a scene. I just looked at the man in front of me, and the last bit of warmth in my heart faded away completely. But Xianxia was completely unaware. He carefully instructed me, "I have already begged the emperor for an edict. I will leave tomorrow. Wait for me. In 5 years, I will come back to marry you." Number 04, the next day. At the betrothal banquet, Xianxia did not appear as expected. The news that I had been jilted spread throughout the capital in a single day. The young masters and ladies from noble families who had long resented me but dared not speak out seized the opportunity to trample me into the dirt. Coupled with Xianxia's tacit encouragement, the 8 words "bad character, poor health" were like a brand etched into my skin. Everyone laughed at me. A pheasant is always a pheasant. Born without the fate to fly to the branch and become a phoenix, young Master Xie used to treat her like the apple of his eye. But now he broke off the engagement just like that. She must have done something unforgivable. As Xianxia had wished, I became the target of public condemnation. Gossips accused me of having affairs, keeping lovers, being infertile, and being too petty to be presentable. Every terrible word imaginable was thrown at me with the rumors. I tried to explain. But in this dynasty, it was already extremely difficult for women to survive. A single letter of broken engagement from Xianxia was enough to condemn me. Later, I stopped leaving the mansion entirely, staying in my small courtyard all day long. It wasn't until the spring of the next year, when a kite with a broken string fell into my courtyard, that things changed. The next second, a man jumped over the wall. He had clear, elegant features, striking contours, beautiful eyes, and a bright red mole at the tip of his straight nose. Like a drop of blood, when he spoke, the mole moved slightly, as if it were alive. "Hey, can you help me pick that up?" He looked at me with bright, sparkling eyes. I froze for a long time. I hadn't spoken to anyone in so long that I didn't react to his words immediately. The man wasn't in a hurry, he just repeated, "My kite accidentally fell into your yard. Could you please pick it up for me?" This time, I understood. I stood up and walked to pick up the kite in the corner. The moment I saw its full appearance, I couldn't help laughing. This wasn't a kite at all, it was just a wooden frame pasted with white paper, with a clumsy painted face casually drawn on it. Seeing me laugh, the man blushed and stammered, "I made it myself. I didn't expect it to fall before it even flew." I glanced at the string tied to the kite's tail. It was actually thick thread used for sewing shoe soles. No wonder it couldn't fly. "You've never flown one before?" He shook his head. "I never had the chance at home. I've only seen others play with them." "Poor thing," I thought. I said, "I know how to make kites. I'll keep this one, and return you a real kite at the same time tomorrow." From then on, the man and I became acquainted because of this kite. He never asked why I refused to go out. He just kept bringing me all kinds of delicious snacks and interesting toys, talking to me over the wall. He told me about the new snack shop that had opened in the east of the city, and about the blacksmith in the west of the city who had been chased all over the street by his wife for hiding private money. I laughed for a long time every time I heard these stories. Later, I learned that the man's name was Shenju, a young general of Dingyuan. He had only returned earlier that year after winning a battle, and when he said he hadn't had the chance to fly a kite as a child, it was only because his family was strict and didn't allow him to play, not because he couldn't afford to buy one, as I had thought. Still later, Shenju asked me if I would marry him. I asked, "Do you know what people outside are saying about me?" He nodded, "I do, but I don't believe them." He looked at me with bright eyes, just like when we first met. "The reason they speak of you that way is because they don't know you. But I know you, and I know what they say is all lies. You are intelligent and kind, I like you, and I want to marry you." He stood there in a bold red robe, his sleeves fluttering in the wind, his posture straight and tall like a pine tree growing in ice and snow, firmly and stubbornly pulling me upward. My eyes grew hot, and I nodded in agreement. The next day, General Shen arrived at my mansion in a grand procession with betrothal gifts to propose marriage, even though our mansions were next door. He insisted on leading the procession around the entire capital, making sure everyone knew he was proposing to the Yi family's young daughter, Yi Ji. There were no shortage of foolish people who tried to stir up trouble along the way, but before they could get close, they were dragged away with their mouths covered by men Shenju had arranged in advance. In his words, No one was allowed to ruin his happy day. In the 2nd year of our marriage, I gave birth to our daughter, a man. If Xianxia hadn't returned to the capital again, I would have forgotten all about him. Number 05. Xianxia refused to believe that I was already married. He also refused to listen to my explanations, stubbornly insisting that I had made up the lie to get revenge on him for breaking off our engagement back then. In the end, he only glared at me with a dark expression, then left angrily with Jiang Ruoxue. Shortly after they left, a man skipped out of the inner room and ran up to me. Mother. Look at a man's new clothes. Putting those two out of my mind, I reached out to pat the 2 little buns on a man's head. They're beautiful. A man raised her chin proudly. Definitely prettier than Daddy's. After that chance encounter at the tailor's shop, I didn't leave the mansion again. First, I didn't want to run into those 2 self-righteous people. Second, the winter solstice palace banquet was approaching. Earlier that year, the Tartars had invaded the border. Shenju, as General Ding Yuan, had led the army to fight, winning 3 consecutive battles. He had not only stabilized the border defense but also dealt a heavy blow to the enemy's arrogance. When eunuch Zhong from the emperor's side came to deliver the imperial edict, he specially reminded us that the emperor was overjoyed and had specially arranged this palace banquet. As a favorite of the emperor, Shenju had to be meticulous in everything during the banquet. Soon, the winter solstice arrived. Before we left, the father and daughter had a quarrel over something that had happened the night before. The reason was that a man had thrown a tantrum and wanted to sleep with me, but when she woke up in the morning, she found herself in her own bed. The little girl ran to the main courtyard without changing her clothes. Accusing Shenju of carrying her away while she was asleep, Shenju firmly denied it. It was you, bad daddy, stinky daddy. Why won't you let me sleep with mother? You're almost 30 and still sleeping with my mother, shameless. A man's little face turned red with anger. Shenju, however, was unconcerned. Upon hearing the last sentence, he even grinned. So what if I'm 30? I'll sleep with your mother even when I'm 80. When we die, we'll be buried in the same coffin. For all eternity. He looked so rascally that no one would have guessed he was a great general who had killed countless enemies with his own hands. A man was stunned, and the next second, tears gushed out of her eyes. I comforted her for a long time, kissing her, coaxing her, before finally calming her down and persuading her to go back and change her clothes. Unexpectedly, as soon as a man stepped out of the courtyard gate, Shenju leaned over with his handsome face. Wife, I want a kiss too. Number 06. Once everything was sorted out, the family hurried onto the carriage heading for the palace. Shenju was supposed to come with us, but unexpectedly, a message arrived from the palace just before we left, saying the emperor wanted to see him first. He had to ride ahead on his horse. As dusk fell, the carriage stopped steadily at the palace gate. As soon as we reached the entrance of the palace banquet, we heard a soft call from behind. Jiniang. I paused, feeling a touch of impatience. Why was this man so persistent? But then I thought, now that he had been promoted to Bachelor of the Grand Secretariat, he was indeed qualified to attend the palace banquet. I suppressed the irritation in my heart and turned around. Xianxia was wearing a pale cyan robe with faint interlaced bamboo patterns on the hem, exuding the demeanor of a scholar. I heard he had accomplished much in the northwest over the past few years, and his return to the capital this time was indeed a triumphant one. I nodded slightly and replied, Minister Xie. Xianxia frowned. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then hesitated and closed it again. Instead, Jiang Ruoxue beside him narrowed her eyes and looked me up and down. Why are you here? Today, the emperor is hosting a banquet, inviting officials of the 5th rank and above to attend with their families. How did you get in? At the word families, I glanced at her instinctively. A flash of guilt crossed Xianxia's eyes. Jiniang, don't overthink it. I didn't even bat an eyelid, uninterested in his explanation. Unexpectedly, he reached out to grab my hand. But Ruoxue is right, this is not the place for you. Leave quickly. If you want to see me, I'll come to the Yi mansion to find you tomorrow. I waved my sleeve to dodge his hand. Minister Xie, please respect yourself. My voice turned cold. I am here today because I received an invitation. Why should I leave? I was truly confused. Had he still not learned that I was already married after all these days? As it turned out, my guess was correct. Since his return, Xianxia had been busy reporting on his duties. His rare free time was spent helping Jiang Ruoxue network. Even bringing her to the banquet today was to save face for her, to let everyone in the capital know that Jiang Ruoxue was still the admired, noble daughter of the late Grand Tutor Jiang. Thus, Xianxia not only didn't know I was married but also thought I was waiting at home for him to propose. Seeing me being obstinate, Xianxia looked at me deeply, then sighed. Jiniang, you're too willful. After returning the other day, Ruoxue and I discussed it. Since you refuse to be a noble concubine, I'll elevate you to co-wife instead. It will only be a grievance for Ruoxue. Jiang Ruoxue shook her head. It's fine. The most important thing is to make Miss Yi calm down. She looked up, her displeased gaze falling on me. Miss Yi has gotten her wish. Can you leave now? The palace is a sacred place, not somewhere someone like you can enter and exit freely. Be careful not to offend the nobles and implicate Ningchen. Hearing her words, which were clearly self-serving, a look of relief appeared on Xianxia's face. At the same time, he felt pity for Jiang Ruoxue having to endure letting me be his co-wife. My persistent refusal to acknowledge them, treating them as if they were invisible, also made him angry. Just as he opened his mouth to reprimand me, a clear child's voice rang out, drowning his words. Mother! A man ran over from not far away, her hands full of jangling trinkets. Earlier, she had seen a little friend and insisted on going to play for a while, so I had stayed here waiting. Otherwise, I would have left long ago and wouldn't have had to listen to their nagging. A man rushed up to me, showing off the things in her hands one by one. I didn't notice the two figures beside me freezing simultaneously. The moment he saw a man's face clearly, Xianxia felt as if his head had been struck by lightning. Unable to recover for a long time, watching the two of us about to leave, he asked in an extremely hoarse voice, "What did you just call her?" A man didn't understand why he was asking. She looked up at me, then replied politely, "Mother, this is my mother." Upon hearing this, Xianxia stumbled, his body swaying slightly. His eyes were fixed on a man's face. Number 07. I knew exactly why. A man looked exactly like me when I was a child. Having grown up with me, Xianxia couldn't possibly fail to recognize that this was my daughter. All the words I had said before were not as convincing as a man appearing in front of him. Married, with a child. I hadn't lied to him. The color drained from Xianxia's face, turning deathly pale. Jiang Ruoxue's expression also turned extremely ugly. A man's appearance was like a loud slap across their faces, making their earlier actions seem ridiculous, like clowns. Xianxia's throat felt as if it was being tightly choked, making it difficult even to breathe. When did this happen? Seeing me not answering, he asked again, "When did you marry someone else?" I pursed my lips and said, "Do you remember the second year after you left? When I wrote to you in the Northwest asking you to return the engagement token, the second year." A vein throbbed sharply at his temple, his face filled with disbelief. I confirmed his suspicion. "Yes, that's when I got the token back, to completely cut off ties with you and marry someone else." "Impossible." Xianxia denied without hesitation. "You told me you had found a craftsman who could repair it and wanted to take it to be fixed." I nodded, indifferent. "That's right. But I lied to you. There was no craftsman. I threw the token away a long time ago." The engagement token between Xianxia and me was a marriage stone we had prayed for at Hongming Temple when I turned 15. The one in his hand had a crack, but due to the stone's special material, no one had been able to repair it. So I had deliberately made up that excuse to get the token back. As for his token, I had already returned it to his mansion. Xianxia's eyes turned scarlet as he stared at me intensely, the hostility around him barely contained. At that moment, Shenju, having finished his audience with the emperor, walked along the palace road towards us. Seeing the four of us standing at the entrance, he raised an eyebrow. "Madam, what's going on here?" As soon as he finished speaking, he walked to my side, placing his large hand on my shoulder in a dominant gesture to show his possession. Xianxia's face darkened completely, his expression tense, his eyes as cold as ice. With more and more guests arriving for the banquet, I walked forward, leaning into Shenju's hold. I casually answered his question. Met 2 old acquaintances, exchanged a few words. Shenju was dissatisfied with this answer, pursing his lips and saying nothing. His curved, dog-like eyes glared at me accusingly. Helpless, I took his hand with my free one and squeezed it tightly. All right, I'll make it up to you when we get back. Shenju's eyes lit up instantly. I knew he was just pretending to be wronged. I had told Shenju everything about my past with Xianxia before we got married. Of course, he wouldn't overthink it. He was just disgusted by Xianxia's repeated, unwelcome pestering. Number 08. I thought that after the palace banquet, Xianxia would have accepted the fact that I had married someone else and would soon marry Jiang Ruoxue. Unexpectedly, several days later, there was not the slightest news of their wedding. Instead, the engagement between him and me from 5 years ago was brought up again. My mother came to the mansion with a worried face, asking me what Xianxia was up to. He was the one who insisted on breaking off the engagement back then. Now that you're already married with a 3-year-old child, why is he bringing up the past again, acting as if he can't live without you? As she spoke, she pulled a yellowed piece of paper from her sleeve and unfolded it for me. It was clearly the marriage contract between Xianxia and me from back then. When Xianxia had come to break off the engagement 5 years ago, he had been in such a hurry that he hadn't taken the contract back. Later, I had only been focused on getting the engagement token back and had completely forgotten about it. Now, he had come to the mansion with this contract, whimsically wanting to fulfill the engagement. I took the contract, my gaze falling on the small characters at the bottom. I still remembered that the person writing the contract had trembled slightly, spilling half a drop of ink on the paper, accidentally connecting the last character of Xianxia's name and the first character of Yiji's name. I had told him to rewrite it, but Xianxia had refused, even keeping this ink-stained contract as a treasure. This ink blot is perfect, linking our names together. It's a good omen. Now, looking at this so-called good omen, I only felt annoyed. My mother glanced at my expression carefully, and seeing only impatience, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although Shenju seems carefree most of the time, he's still a man. Don't be foolish and do anything to betray him. Hearing the implication in her words, I couldn't help laughing and crying. Mother, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. The past is long gone. She looked at me suspiciously. Truly gone? I nodded firmly. Truly gone. I knew what my mother was worried about. She was afraid that now that Xianxia was back, I would change my mind, abandon my husband and child, and reconcile with him. After all, everyone had known how I felt about Xianxia once. But as I said, the past was in the past for me. I would never look back. Number 09. Perhaps because he never got the response he wanted, Xianxia finally left me alone for a while. However, this peace did not last long. The day before the winter solstice, I returned from Mingshan Temple. The carriage had just stopped at the gate of the Shen mansion when a figure suddenly darted out from the side, nearly colliding with me as I was about to step down. My maid, quick-witted, shielded me behind her. It was Xianxia. Only a few days had passed, but he looked like a completely different person. His robes were crumpled, dark circles hung heavily under his eyes, stubble dotted his chin, and his entire being exuded an air of decay and restlessness. He stared at me fiercely, his eyes swirling with pain, unwillingness, and a borderline maniacal obsession. Jiniang. His voice was hoarse beyond recognition, and he reached out as if to grab me. I looked at him, my heart completely calm, only disgust remained. Now that you know I'm married, why do you keep bringing up our old engagement? Xianxia's eyes darted anxiously to mine. That engagement break doesn't count. Jiniang, you know I never really meant to end it. I've always had you in my heart. Didn't we agree you'd wait for me for 5 years? I came back as promised to propose, so why did you marry someone else? If you're bothered by Ruoxue, I've already sent someone to take her back to the Zhong family in the northwest. She won't be coming back. The Zhong family in the northwest was the same family Jiang Ruoxue had married into years earlier. Minister Xie. I spoke up, my clear voice cutting through his words as I met his urgent gaze calmly. That 5-year promise was made by you alone. I never agreed to it. Besides, the best decision I ever made in my life was probably not waiting for you. Xianxia flinched as if struck, his face paling. He also remembered the words he'd spoken when we first reunited, wanting me to be his concubine. If I had foolishly believed him and waited those 5 years, all I would have gotten was the humiliation of entering his mansion as a concubine. I twitched the corner of my mouth. The past is in the past, whether that engagement break is valid or not no longer matters to me. What matters is that I am now Shinju's wife. From now on, please stop saying these meaningless things and stop disturbing my life. With that, I turned and walked away, not sparing a glance at his ashen face. My personal maid escorted me through the Shen mansion gate, shutting the dejected Xianxia out completely. Number 10. I thought after this incident, Xianxia would finally give up. But I had underestimated his obsession, or rather, his inability to accept that Yi, the girl who had once followed him everywhere and had eyes only for him, had truly left him for good. He began to intercept me at every turn. Sometimes, when I went to the temple to burn incense, he would suddenly appear on the only path I could take. Sometimes, when I attended a flower viewing banquet hosted by another official's wife, he would barge in regardless of his status, only to ask me one question: why? He even stationed himself at the alley entrance where I returned home. Waiting for hours on end, every single time, he tried to evoke our past memories. He said he remembered my favorite foods, that I was afraid of the cold, that we had floated river lanterns together and made wishes. He said he regretted everything, that he had sent Xianxia away, that he was willing to abandon everything if only I would take him back. Every single time, I responded with nothing but cold indifference. He grew worse with each passing day. His eyes became bloodshot. His robes lost their former neatness. Driven to despair, he once knelt in front of my carriage in full view of the public, his voice choking with tears. "Jiniang, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Please give me another chance." The crowd on the street pointed and whispered, gossiping among themselves. I sat inside the carriage, listening to his humble pleas, feeling not the slightest flicker of emotion, only pity. If he had known this would happen, why had he done what he did in the first place? His current suffering did not stem from love for me. It was merely his inability to accept loss, his inability to accept that something that had once belonged to him had completely slipped out of his control. Shinju did not say much about the matter. He simply assigned more guards to accompany me. Before long, Xianxia found that his days in the imperial court had started to take a turn for the worse. The tasks he was in charge of were plagued by constant mishaps. Critical official documents went missing, promotions that had been a sure thing slipped through his fingers, colleagues who had once been friendly drifted away, and subordinates who had once curried favor with him began to obey his orders only superficially. He was swamped with dealing with all these sudden troubles, leaving him frazzled and with far less time and energy to pester me. He was not a fool. He quickly guessed that Shinju was pulling the strings behind the scenes. He had once stormed over to confront Shinju, but no one knew what had transpired between them. All anyone knew was that after that day, he had become even more gloomy and dejected. Number 11. Later, I heard that Xianxia had fallen gravely ill. During his fever, he had raved deliriously, calling out my name over and over again. After he recovered from his illness, he finally seemed to face reality. He stopped pestering me and faded completely from the public eye. Some said he had resigned from his official post and left the capital, this place of heartbreak, vanishing without a trace. As for Xianxia, she had not returned to the northwest as Xianxia had claimed. I saw her again at a coming-of-age ceremony for a nobleman's daughter. She stood behind the mansion's main wife, dressed in a gaudy red and purple robe, her face caked in thick powder and rouge. When someone beside her said something, she broke into an ingratiating smile. As I was leaving, she blocked my carriage. "Yi, you're pleased to see me like this, aren't you?" She tilted her chin up, looking at me haughtily. Earlier during the feast, someone had mentioned the former Grand Tutor's daughter, the once untouchable ice beauty of the capital. Now, she was working as a concubine for someone else. At first, the official who had taken this unattainable flower into his household had doted on her greatly, but as time went on, he inevitably grew tired of her. Xianxia had fallen out of favor. Her food, clothing, and daily supplies reduced to a fraction of what they had once been. In her youth, she had been doted on by her father. After marrying, she had been cherished by her husband. Even when she became a widow, Xianxia had rushed to attend to her every need. Now, however, she had no choice but to shed her cold, aloof facade, covering her face with the very powder and rouge she had once looked down on just to curry favor with others. I did not answer her. I did not even spare her a second glance. I stepped straight into the carriage and sat down. Years passed in peace and tranquility. Shunju and I treated each other with respect, our bond deepening with each passing day. Occasionally, on a quiet afternoon bathed in warm sunlight, or when I heard an old tune from years ago, I might feel a momentary flicker of remembrance, the impetuous young man who had once made my heart flutter and had once broken it into pieces. But it was only ever a momentary flicker, like a breeze skimming the surface of the water, stirring up a tiny ripple before quickly fading away, leaving no trace behind.